Okay. Mr. Chair and the panelists and distinguished guests, thank you for having me today, and it's been an honor and privilege. I've been walking around the expo today, and there has been so many education-related interesting ventures that it's been fascinating. But I think one of the, as I was walking through those stalls, I was constantly thinking that it would be so nice to implement all of these in our schools. But again, I think this theme has been echoed from various questions in the last session as well, that you constantly have to make sure and remember that you don't create additional digital divide by introducing new technologies which the rural and the have-not segments are not yet ready to adopt. So coming back to the theme of the access, excellence, and equity in education, I think I'm going to slightly sort of move off the topic. Let's talk less about PPP, more talk about Bangladesh's perspective, what we have learned over the last few years, and also the priorities going forward. PPP is a relatively new phenomenon in Bangladesh, and I'll just touch briefly on that a little bit. First, let me talk about some of the myths in ICT and education that we have discovered. First of all, ICT in education equals ICT education. ICT literacy must be taught to students, that you have to teach everyone how to use computers through books. Sending only computers to schools is the first step for ICT in education. And along the same line, if you want to do anything in ICT in education, first setting up a computer lab has to be the first step. There are some of these myths that we have discovered based on certain experiences, because somewhere along the mid-90s in Bangladesh, we first started talking about ICT in education. We adopted it in our curriculum. And what ended up happening is that money were allocated and computers were bought, crores and hundreds of crores of takas of computer. Labs were set up in some schools. But these were sent without context. These were sent without proper training. These were sent without proper understanding. So the access for the students were very, very limited. So we haven't really seen that much visible impact in the space of IT literacy, because the students had very little access, number one. And the second of all, the dynamics of how the schools operate in a local area, I think we failed to understand. And again, the understanding of the context. We cannot just say that technology has to be implemented, it has to be in ICT education, and let's just ram it in. It has to be looked at from a slightly different perspective. And this brings me to the point of the campaign of Digital Bangladesh that the government of Bangladesh has announced. That gives a bit of a background that you probably know that early last year, the government came to power with a campaign around a Vision 2021. And they talked about building a digital Bangladesh by 2021. A lot of people ask, what does digital Bangladesh mean? Is it a vision of technology, or is it a vision of something else? I mean, are we going to just wake up on January 1st, 2021, with everybody having laptops, farmers plowing, carrying cell phones and stuff? No, that's not going to happen. I think one of the things is that it has been quite clearly articulated is that there's a vision of development. We want to go, we are at some point in our country, the development stage, and we want to get to somewhere. And we need to understand where ICT is relevant. If ICT can be used as a tool to get there, then we will use it. If not, then we will use other contexts. And in a lot of cases, we will use, doesn't have to be computer, web, internet. It can be anything. It can be television, it can be phone, it can be call centers, whichever is appropriate at whatever context. So this brings us to the notion of education. So what are the goals of education policy? Where do we want to be going forward? And that will, where does ICT fit in that role? So ensuring a productive 21st century ready workforce. That's something as a topmost priority, that education must produce quality workforce for our industry. Improving curriculum, pedagogy, and teachers' capacity building to ensure quality education for all. It's a standard universal thing for all the countries, I assume, but this is something that we want to get to. Then ensuring transparency, efficiency, and effectiveness at all levels of educational administration. So administrational works. And the lastly, then the accountability, the securing accountability to real stakeholders, basically the interactive space between students and parents and the teachers to participate in the policy making to a certain extent. So this is where we want to get to. So that brings us to the questions of then, how do ICT play a role, and where do we see our priorities going forward? So subject-based, so obviously you will see going forward that hardware definitely has a role to play, but there is more importance given on subject-based education. So subject-based is more important than ICT literacy for the next 5 years. That means that we're not going to create an ICT curriculum and teach kids or secondary students on how to use computer, because this has been proven that kids these days, regardless of which part of the digital divide they are, do not need, if you give them a context, give them a reason to use technology, they will somehow figure it out. So it's not a matter of memorization. Students acquire the skills when they need it. So there's not going to be no point in teaching ICT literacy the way we have done before, where there's lab theory, what is motherboard, what is C++, what is Pascal, and those kinds of things without context is not important anymore. 21st century skills must be taught. So that means critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and project-based learning. So these are the key areas where we want to develop these sets of analytical skills among the students. And lastly, market-oriented skills, linked skills policy and vocational education. Then support, how we can provide the support to this budding software industry that's growing up in Bangladesh. So how education, how business-focused our education can be. Similarly, on the curriculum and the content side, priorities are also similar. For example, in ICT literacy, rather than teaching, spending crores of taka on ICT literacy content, as our chair has mentioned, that we need to actually let them use internet. We need to provide the infrastructure and that's necessary to provide connectivity and high-speed connectivity. And there has been government has announced plans for national broadband connectivity going forward, and that should come all the way to the grassroots level. So once you have connectivity, then you can guarantee that 1,000 flowers will bloom. Do not want to provide instruction. Again, let innovations flow. If you build it, they will come. Proposal to be made on a mandatory and tertiary in all colleges under National University to make sure that the broadband, high-speed broadband must be there. Again, on subject-based content, teacher training will get huge amount of importance, because they are basically no matter how much we try to say that, they sometimes can become the bottleneck there, but they are the sort of central point of interaction. If we cannot empower them, if we cannot take them to the next level, then we might as well pack our bags. So classroom teaching, learning. It's a very, very important element. That's where the priorities are going to go. And lastly, e-learning for students. I think our previous speaker just spoke briefly on that. Again, in the secondary school, short-term multimedia classroom in every school. And I'm going to talk about a little bit of some experiences we found in our session. Quickly, I'm going to go through that. And then making the existing computer labs functional. As I said in the story before, that, a lot, we found in one lab where the computers went in,